There we are. All right, let's begin in prayer. So, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. So, again, we want to listen to your word, especially as we enter tonight into the recounting of your passion, of that somber, stark story. Reminding us we are that you suffered for our sins as an expression of that unlimited love of the Father. So we ask that you open us to your word. Let us hear it anew. Let us not only be hearers of the word, but doers of it also. And we make this and all our prayers through Christ our Lord. Amen. All right, so we are talking about the Passion tonight. Next week will be our last week. We'll deal with chapter 16, Mark's version of the resurrection. All right, and we'll do some wrap-up stuff. Now, I do want to mention right at the beginning, before I forget, that we do have a session planned that's going to be taught on the following week, the 13th. It's going to be taught by Dr. Joe Rosa, who's a member of the church. And it is I can't remember the exact language he uses, but it has to do with the physical and medical dimensions of the Passion and Crucifixion. It's sort of a doctor's exploration of the Passion and of Calvary from that sort of medical and scientific and physical point of view. It sounds fascinating. It's going to be the 13th. So it'll be like next week is the 6th. It's our last session in this series. Then we'll do one after that, and it's Joe Rosa. It's in the bulletin. You can look at the exact language he uses to describe it. And he's done this in other places, and it's gone over very well. So it sounds very, very interesting. Okay, now, tonight it's the Passion, which is chapter 14 and 15 in Mark. Some people say that Mark's Gospel is really a story of the Passion with an introduction. Mark's Passion is the most lonely, dark, silent, somber, stark of all the four accounts. The clearest contrast would be with John's Gospel, where the Passion is the journey to glory. No one takes my life from me, I lay it down of my own accord, says John. So John's Jesus proceeds to the judgment as he's the judge. Everybody else is being judged. And it's the path to glory. Not so with Mark. Mark's is a journey. You might say, using Eugene O'Neill's play title, A Long Day's Journey into Night. We might contrast it with Luke's account, which is modified by compassion. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And has the story of the good thief. That's only in Luke. This day you will be with me in paradise. There are no such kind of uplifting moments in the Passion of Mark. You've probably heard reference to the last words, the 7 last words of Jesus, right? Sometimes on Good Friday, but especially Protestant churches do the 7 last words of Jesus, right? Of those 7 last words, only one is from Mark. Do you know what it is? My God, why have you forsaken me? And we'll look at that much also. My God, why have you forsaken me? Now, as we go through it, let's keep in mind the two strands that I've been tracing through Mark. Who is Jesus? In terms of his titles and the narrative, and who is a disciple? Let's keep those in mind as we go through the Passion as well. Okay? You remember, we said about the disciple, the true disciple is the one who has gone to Calvary, who knows the cross, who takes up his cross and follows him. All right. So let's take so that if you have your Bibles, open them to chapter 14. If we look firstly at 61, I'm going to jump back and forth a little bit as we go through this. 61, where are you? Here we are. So this is Jesus. The high priest rose before the assembly and questioned Jesus, saying, "Have you no answer? What are these men testifying against you?" But he was silent and answered nothing. That is the characteristic attitude of Jesus in Mark's Passion. He was silent. Again the high priest asked him and said to him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" And Jesus answered, "I am." Jesus speaks 3 times in the course of the Passion of Mark. The first time is here, to affirm the title that he is the Messiah, the Son of God. Do you remember when we started the story? The first line of Mark's Gospel? The beginning of the Gospel of Jesus Christ, Son of God. Remember that? This is the language here. Are you the Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One, the Son of God? And he breaks that to say, "I am." Now again, of course, the "I am" for Jewish people brings up echoes of what? Burning bush. The burning bush. Moses. The name of, who are you? I am Yahweh. I am who I am. Okay. So, another thing you could say in the introduction to the Passion is it's organized around sets of 3s. Jesus prays 3 times in Gethsemane. Peter denies 3 times. There are 3 groups who mock Jesus. And then at the death, as we see later, there are 3 periods of 3 hours. So here we have Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God. Then if we just go a little further to 15:2, Pilate now, or before Pilate now. Pilate questioned him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" It's the second time Jesus speaks. He said to him in reply, "You say so." So this is an affirmation of being the king. Again, the messianic royal title. And the last time he speaks is from the cross, which is from Psalm 22. My God, why have you forsaken me?" Now that is, again, the suffering servant. Remember I spoke to you about the suffering servant? We read the passage from Isaiah. There are many, many passages in the Old Testament that refer to this figure who will suffer and will take the people's suffering upon himself. So the Psalm 22 is one of those texts that goes to the suffering servant. So Jesus speaks 3 times. It's to affirm he is the Messiah and the Son of God. He is the long-awaited King of the Jews, and he is the suffering servant. So it is that now at the crucifixion, all these titles can be affirmed. There's no more secret. There's no more need to be quiet about it, because the cross, the crucifixion, is an essential component of who he is. And now at that moment, they can be publicly affirmed. Okay, so with that, I'm going to concentrate principally on two texts. One is Gethsemane. Gethsemane is 14:32 and following. Then they came to a place called Gethsemane. So Gethsemane, just geographically, is across the Kidron Valley it's at the foot of the Mount of Olives. It's described in the Mount of Olives. If you go there in modern day Jerusalem, you'll be looking right at the western wall. You can't see the western wall of the temple, but if you could, you'd be looking at it, but you see the western wall of the Crusader walls around the city. And he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took with him Peter, James, and John. Okay, so we're familiar with him taking these three, right? He took them, last Sunday we had reading the Transfiguration. He took them up to a high mountain by themselves. So there's there are circles in Jesus' discipleship. There's the 72, the bigger number, then there's the 12, and within the 12, there's this three. There are three times when they are there. There's Gethsemane, the Transfiguration, and the raising of Jairus' daughter. If you go to Israel, the same artist, Antonio Berlucci, I think was his name, Italian, designed the church on the top of the Mount of Transfiguration, which is, tradition has it as Mount Tabor, but it's unlikely it was Mount Tabor. But anyway, that's the tradition, and then Gethsemane. So if you go to the one on Tabor, it's top of the mountain, it's all windows and light and open, but Gethsemane is dark and Lenten coloured inside, purple. Remember we were there, the Church of the Nations, right? So it's an interesting kind of contrast. And he began to be troubled and distressed. And he said to them, "My soul is sorrowful even unto death. Remain here and keep watch." Now, do you remember the characteristic of the disciple from last week? Do you remember when we talked about apocalyptic literature and all that? What were they called to do? Watch. Be alert. Be awake. You don't know the time or the hour. So here the disciples are not able to do that. He advanced a little and fell to the ground and prayed. By the way, this is the origin of the word vigil. Vigil, vigilia, is the word for keep watch. He advanced a little and fell to the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass by him. The hour, that you find that a lot in John's Gospel, my hour has not yet come. So the hour is this hour of suffering, of glory, of death. He said, "Abba, Father." So this is, again, important. This is the way that, this is you, the Bible, Jesus is addressing the Father as Abba. It is used to this day. I witness myself a guy coming off a plane in Tel Aviv, and two little girls, his daughters obviously, were waiting for the mother, broke from the mother's arms and chased over and jumped up on him, Abba, 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 like daddy going home. So, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. I talked about the cup when we talked about James and John. Remember when they said, can we have seats at your right hand and your left hand? You remember that? And what was Jesus' question? Can you drink from the cup that I will drink from? And I did a whole piece on the cup that night. So this is Jesus in all his humanity, afraid of what's to come, scared of death and how it will come to him. But not what I will, but what you will. So this, of course, is you could say, is in one sentence, the summation of all Christian spirituality. Not my will, but your will be done. This is an echo, which Mark doesn't have anything about Mary, but in the Annunciation, Luke, Mary has this, let it be done to me according to your will. So the journey of faith and of spiritual growth is really a journey from my will to God's will. The submission of the ego, of our will, to the will of God. When he returned, he found them asleep. He said to Peter, Simon, are you asleep? So this is, as I would say, you know, the call for the disciple was to be awake, to watch. Could you not keep watch for 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not undergo the test. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. And withdrawing again, he prayed, saying the same thing. Then he returned once more and found them asleep, for they could not keep their eyes open and did not know what to answer him. He returned a third time, to have the constant threes here, and said to them, are you still sleeping and taking your rest? It is enough. The hour has come. Behold, the Son of Man is to be handed over to sinners. Get up, let us go. See, my betrayer is at hand. So this triple failure here parallels the triple denial which just preceded it, okay, on Peter's part. Then while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived, accompanied by a crowd with swords and clubs, who had come from the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders. So you will notice, of course, that the apostles, far from getting a free pass in Mark, they come out very badly. They are poor examples. This is not hagiographical. You know, they're not sort of like some kind of pastor saints to imitate. They're the very opposite. So Judas betrays, Peter denies. His betrayer had arranged a signal with him, saying, the one I shall kiss is the one. Arrest him and lead him away securely. Now there is some tremendous poignancy about, do you betray the Son of Man with a kiss? The one that I shall kiss. The kiss is the sign of love. So somebody betrayed by the signs of love. That's a tremendous pain. I think we can, you know, the other thing was the Last Supper. We're not going to go back to that tonight. But is it I? The one who dips in the dish with me, the one who breaks bread with me, is the one who will betray me. How much human suffering there is caused by ones who break the same bread or have exchanged the signs of affection. I think we can see all of that here in this utterly sad and poignant question. Do you betray the Son of Man with a kiss? All kinds of probably sexual betrayal and all that we can see included there. We often focus, and maybe quite rightly, on the physical sufferings of the cross, which are tremendous and designed to be so, excruciating. And I'm sure Joe Rosa will go into that. But maybe we'll underplay the emotional suffering, the loneliness, the betrayal, the way his friends left him. This must be a tremendous pain. His closest friends deny him, betray him, walk away from him, are not there. So there is, and Mark, I think, brings that out, that the isolation, the abandonment, the breakdown of friendship at the most human level. Do you betray the Son of Man with a kiss? He came and immediately went over to him and said, Rabbi, and he kissed him. And at this they laid hands on him and arrested him. One of the bystanders drew his sword, struck the high priest's servant, and cut off his ear. Now, Matthew identifies that as Peter. But Mark doesn't, for whatever reason. It's not like he's easy on Peter all the time. He doesn't. So I don't know. Make that what you will. He doesn't identify it here. It would be sort of a character for Peter, a bit impetuous and so have you come out as against a robber with sword? And John has him heal the ear as well. Do you come out with as against a robber with swords and clubs to seize me? Day after day I was with you teaching in the temple there. You did not arrest me, but the scriptures may be fulfilled. And they all left him and fled. So of course they wouldn't do it in the light of day. They had to do it under cover of darkness when there's nobody around. They weren't going to chance arresting him when there might be some supporters or crowds around. Okay, so there's a cowardice, there's a kind of sneakiness in how they organize this. Judas. So Judas has a descending reputation throughout the Gospels, and not that it starts very good, but it gets worse as it goes along. So in Mark, he is more or less a disillusioned insurrectionist. He's disillusioned that Jesus is not the one he had hoped who would take on the Romans and win the longed-for victory over the conqueror. Okay? By the time we get to John, he's a robber. He's in it for the money. He was in charge of the purse, and he's stealing, right? His motivation kind of descends as we go through the Gospels. Mary, on the other hand, has an ascending reputation throughout the Gospels. There's very little of Mary in Mark's Gospel. But in Matthew there's still more in Luke, lots of Luke. The whole Annunciation, Mary is the whole Christmas story, Mary is the key figure, right? And in John, then of course, Mary is Cana, and foot of the cross, and behold your mother, behold your son, and so on, right? So the reputation isn't the right word, the tension, ascending through the four Gospels for Mary, but it descends for Judas, as I say, already beginning from a bad start. Now, and they all left him and fled. Now a young man followed him, wearing nothing but a linen cloth around his body. They seized him, but he left the cloth behind and ran off naked. Matthew and Luke, who include almost all of Mark in their Gospels, do not include this verse. What do you think it means?
Maybe it's to clothe him when he's comes back. It's like the cloth somehow covers Jesus when he returns. Sort of.
The other idea, yeah.
I think you mentioned something about baptism and linen clothes.
Yeah, one theory is one possible way to take that is, the baptized were baptized in rivers, so that when they came up, they were clothed in a white robe. So, is this Mark in a persecuted situation where people did leave the church? Is this a symbol of that? That he left behind his baptismal robe and left? I think you could. That's the one that makes sense to me. The other thing along those lines is Peter's denials. That he even knew Jesus, right? So for a persecuted church in Rome, where many probably denied the faith to save their lives, just can't understand that. That this was to give them hope. That Peter, the church representative, denied Jesus. And yet he came back to be the leader of the church. So maybe there was a lesson there for a persecuted and church that sort of looked after itself. If any saw the movie Silence, that was the whole conceit, right? The whole thing was, would you deny your faith by stamping on remember you see Silence, the movie Silence? It's based on a novel by a Japanese Catholic author called Suzuki Endo. So that's the whole drama, is whether they would, and many did not, refused to do so, and were, of course, killed excruciatingly. But maybe Matthew or Mark is giving some hope, consolation, hope to people who have failed that test. That it's not the end of everything. So anyhow, that's the way I take it. I think there have been other attempts at explanation past.
So on the lines of what you're saying, wouldn't it be a beginning of something new? And that he's naked, just like we're born naked, and he's a new person with coming, going from that to that.
But he runs away. It's kind of like there's a negative connotation here, not a positive.
Fleeing.
He's fleeing, yeah. So, Jesus is naked on the cross. He's probably naked when he's baptized. Is it some kind of evocation of that? I don't know. I've read some things like that too. But Chris.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
Can you call it a church at this point? Can you call it a church?
The key thing there is what point. At the point Mark is writing, it's church.
Okay. Yeah.
By 65 or whatever, 65, 67 AD, it's certainly a church. There's a church in Rome that we think he's writing from.
Okay. And then also I was wondering, speaking of baptism, when you have John the Baptist baptizing people, what was he baptizing them into?
Right. Good question. So John's baptism, as Jesus himself, was a baptism of repentance. It was more of a baptism from than a baptism into. Do you remember? It was repentance. So John's baptism is not Christian baptism. We have to distinguish between John's baptism and Christian baptism. Christian baptism is joining into the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's the whole point. You're being submerged into those waters of chaos to rise with Jesus to new life. And it's an initiation into the community of the Spirit. John's is about a change of life. John's is more connected to the temple washing rituals. And that's probably, John, I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, but John was probably linked with the Qumran community in the desert that rejected the temple and sacrifice, but kept the washing, the ritual washings. And so what they did was, which is in fact what Christianity does, it replaces sacrifice with prayer. So some of the early baptismal fonts, if you go to Gallicantu, Peter Gallicantu, the Cockcrow Church in Jerusalem, there are some old ruins there. There's an old, it's like holy water founts for entrance to the church, but they're very much like the temple washing fonts. So it's more linked with that cleansing washing than it is with the community of the Spirit. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of a question I wanted to ask a lot earlier, because it's connected in a way.
Sure.
When he's asked, "Are you the King of the Jews?" his response, "You say so," has always seemed a little sharp to me.
Yes.
But also, it's almost, it doesn't exactly affirm it either.
Yes, see what you're saying. It doesn't, it's not a direct affirmation.
It feels like an ironical.
Yes. And that is, maybe we'll go to that right away. Now, of course, he's in trial here, right? So if he says, "I am," well, then he's, of course, he is before Pilate in sedition. I mean, Pilate's the king of the Jews, but before the high priest is blasphemy, So, in that sense, he gets out of walking himself into a charge. But irony and mockery are a real common strand in Mark's account. So, and a lot of it is around the King of the Jews. Do you remember the title that's put up over the Jesus Christ, King of the Jews? Jesus the Nazarene, King of the Jews. Rex Eudora. I-N-R-I, as you remember, right? So, that's put up in mockery, but there's also an irony. Like, the mockery is saying, this is the God who claims to be the King of the Jews. Look at him now. Humiliated, crucified, ignominiously, like a common criminal. But the irony is, for the reader, he really is the King of the Jews. And this is how he is the King of the Jews. And the King of the nations too. Right? Through that sacrifice and through that cross, he is king, a different kind of king, enthroned on a cross with a crown of thorns. Right? But the real king. So you see that there's mockery and irony both together there. And there's irony and mockery, irony in that too. Are you the King of the Jews? This is kind of a mocking question. Yeah. But then there's a certain irony. You say so. So you say I am. But then the irony for the reader, for the listener is, well, he is. He's more the King of the Parliament.
Yeah, that's the part that always got, I felt like if you caught Jesus when he wasn't on trial and asked him that question, his response might have been like, "What do you mean of the Jews?" Right? That's the bit that...
Oh yeah, King of the Jews, that's the same from King of the world.
King, right?
Yeah, King, yeah. But the charge against him was the King of the Jews.
Right.
The King, that's the charge that was put on him. So the language of the moment is King of the Jews. I think he would answer it differently, but in this context, it's sort of an issue. He is the King of the Jews, and when he's crucified, that's the tradition was to put the crown up over him, but that's the crown that's put up. Yeah, that's the angel.
And there's the pagans, he's not claiming to be their deity or anything like that, you know, it's the Jewish God.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was that part, not the other.
So, okay. The implication is, of course, that the young man was a disciple, was like a follower. That's the young man who flees and leaves the garment. Okay, let's go to the crucifixion. 15. 33. Well, no, let's go to 22. 15:22. They brought him to the place of Golgotha, which is translated the place of the skull. Now this again is another maybe indication that Mark is writing for a Gentile audience, because he's always translating words. Like if he was writing in Jewish, if he read in Jerusalem, he wouldn't really need to. They gave him wine drugged with myrrh, but he did not take it. They crucified him and divided his garments by casting lots for them. Now that's a reference to an Old Testament Isaiah prophecy. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. That's the first hour that's mentioned. Remember I mentioned the three hours. Really. The inscription of the charge against him read, the King of the Jews. With him they crucified 2 revolutionaries, one on his right and one on his left. Those passing by reviled him, shaking their heads and saying, "Ha! You would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Save yourself by coming down from the cross." Here's that mockery. Likewise, the chief priests with the scribes mocked him among themselves. He saved others. He cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross that we may see and believe. Because if he came down from the cross, he wouldn't be the Messiah. Those who were crucified with him also kept abusing him. So you see the 3 groups that mock him, that abuse him. At noon, now here we have 3 hours later, right? At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. So, actually, I guess I didn't bring that reference. Didn't. That's a reference from Amos. It might be, what's the 33? It might be referenced in your notes. It may be referenced in your notes. Is it? No? That, you know, at the death of the Messiah, darkness would cover the earth. And at 3 o'clock, now we're another 3 hours on, 3 hours and 3, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," which is translated, my God, why have you forsaken me?" So this is from Psalm 22. Let's do this. Can we look up Psalm 22 in the Bibles? Okay. Anybody want to read it for us, please? Go ahead.
My God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me, from the words of my groaning? My God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but find no rest. Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. In you our fathers trusted. They trusted, and you delivered them. To you they cried, and were saved. In you they trusted, and were not disappointed. But I am a worm, and no man, scorned by men, and despised by the people. All who see me mock at me. They make mouths at me. They wag their heads. He committed his cause to the Lord. Let him deliver him. Let him rescue him, for he delights in him. Yet you are he who took me from the womb. You kept me safe upon my mother's breast. Upon you was I cast from my birth. And since my mother bore me, you have been my God. Be not far from me, for trouble is near, and there is none to help.
So it's a cry of out of the depths, the profundest, a cry of desperation. It does arrive at a certain trust at the end, a certain hopefulness at the end of it. So here we have Jesus going into the depths of human abandonment, isolation. You could link this with what we say in the Greek, he descended into hell. You know, Chesterton said somewhere that if atheists were to choose a religion, they should choose Christianity because there God himself was an atheist for an instant. It's a strong statement, you know? Because in this instant. So there's that, you could say Jesus takes on himself here the effects or the consequences of sin. The consequence of sin is isolation, is separation from God, right? Is being God forsaken. And so he calls out of that place. So he's gone into the depths, so it means the same thing as descending into hell. But what is hell but separation from God? It's the God forsaken place. So he enters into that realm. He was sinless, enters into that realm of human experience. And awaits, if you like, God's next word. This is a cry addressed to God. Only God can answer it. And I suppose that's what we're going to talk about next week. What God's answer was. How God put Jesus back in the game. You know? All right, anybody want to come in on that? It's like, almost like, what is the purpose of it all? Jesus Christ, why are we doing this? What is the purpose of it all? So that answer has to await an answer. Okay. I thought we'd take a moment, we've taken those two texts, but I thought one second here, we have to finish that one. At noon, darkness came over the world. Yeah, my God, some of the bystanders had heard and said, look, he's calling Elijah. One of them ran, soaked a sponge with wine, put it in a reed, and gave it to him, saying, wait, let us see if Elijah comes to take him down. Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. The veil of the sanctuary was torn in two from top to bottom. What do you think that's about? So, the veil of the sanctuary, we're talking the temple, right? So the temple had various levels. There was the courtyard of the Gentiles, there was the courtyard of the Jews, there was the place where the priests were, and then the inner sanctum, the inner sanctuary was called the Holy of Holies. Only the high priest could enter the Holy of Holies, and only on one day a year. Anybody know what day of the year he could enter in?
Sabbath?
What?
The Sabbath?
No, 1 day a year.
Oh.
1 day a year. Not 1 day a week. Rosh Hashanah. The Day of Atonement. On the Day of Atonement, the high priest could pass through the veil into the Holy of Holies. What was in the Holy of Holies? What was in the Holy of Holies? The mercy seat. A seat called the mercy seat. That was represented God, the mercy seat. So this is to say, if it is ripped from top to bottom, God has ripped it, it's open access to the mercy seat for all. It is to say, atonement is accomplished. It is to say, there is no, the old covenant is superseded, and the temple is superseded. Because now atonement is realized in Jesus, who had said, destroy this temple and in 3 days I will raise it up. Yes, please.
I read somewhere that the interesting detail about it being top to bottom is because God did it.
Yeah.
It's from top to bottom rather than from bottom.
Yeah, I said that, yes. Yeah, she said that the read somewhere that the fact the detail that it's top to bottom is indicating that God did it. Yes, indeed, it is, that's the implication. God has torn open the veil that blocked off the Holy of Holies, the mercy seat. Now it's open access. Anybody can go there. Were you stretching or were you asking a question? Oh, Chris. Yeah.
So that's to be read literally then.
Yes.
And that's partly why the centurion says, truly this man was the Son of God.
Yes. It is.
Yeah, okay. But, or maybe.
Psalm 22 is hypocrisy, no? Psalm 22, if you read it through the end, it's a prophecy.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Go ahead.
Being that the curtain is torn in two, does that signify a before and after?
Say more. Say more about
The curtain being torn in two parts. There's
before one and after one.
before, it was exclusive to the high priest on
Yes.
Day of Atonement, and now after.
Oh, yes. So the question here is
changed.
Yeah, there's a change of air before and after. Yes, I would say so. That now it's access to everybody. That the old covenant is ended. Sacrifice is ended. We now, the temple is ended. We now, in the new dispensation, have in Jesus Christ access to the mercy seat. And atonement is accomplished in Him, not through the animal sacrifice that the high priest offers. The centurion. So again now, the centurion is the model of the disciple. We said before, he's Roman, of course. Maybe that's not absolutely coincidental, since he's writing in Rome, right, for a Gentile audience. And he is now the disciple who sees the cross and expresses faith. Now that Jesus is crucified, now he can be proclaimed. It is evident who he is. So he is the one who expresses the ultimate affirmation of faith. Truly this man was the Son of God. Which takes us back to the beginning line of the Gospel. The beginning of the Holy Gospel. The beginning of the Gospel of Jesus Christ, Son of God.
And then he would have been a pagan, most likely.
Oh, he's pagan, yeah, he is.
So he doesn't even believe in that.
Exactly. But he is persuaded. He's the first saving result of Jesus' death. Okay? The centurion is soldiers, pagans, seeing how Jesus died, is brought to faith. He's the first effect. The first result. Saving result. Okay, in the few moments I have, I'd like to take a moment to just go down through some of the characters along the way to the Passion. Okay, so where do I find this? Simon of Cyrene. Where is he down to me? 21. 15:21. Okay, thank you. They pressed into service a passerby, Simon, a Cyrenian, who was coming in from the country, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to carry his cross. So, Cyrene is in Africa. He's probably in Jerusalem for the Passover. So, he's introduced in one verse and becomes a disciple. Now, Simon is mentioned in the Acts of the Apostles as one of the people in Antioch. And it's mentioned here that he was the father of Alexander and Rufus. Right? So that's obviously meant to identify him. When Paul writes the letter to the Romans, he greets in a special way Rufus and his mother, my mother too. So obviously this was a life-changing experience for Simon, and he became a leader together with his two sons in the early church. Rufus going to Rome. So you can say that in one verse he becomes a disciple, takes up the cross, key element of the disciple, right? And becomes a believer and leader. It must have felt to Simon like the worst day of his life. He's come a long journey, he's going about his business, he's trying to fly under the radar, and next thing he feels the broadside of the sword on his shoulder, and he's pressed into this service that he never asked for, never wanted, and has no choice but to do. But you know, looking back on it, Simon must have looked back on this as maybe the greatest day of his life. The day when everything changed. And you know, that's often what happens in our lives, isn't it? We go through something and it's like, oh man, this is the worst. Why did this happen to me? You know? And then maybe we come to a stage where it becomes a key turning point. It becomes the place where God put his hand on us, and not just the Roman soldier. Barabbas. Remember Barabbas? There was the custom of releasing a criminal as kind of a, humanitarian gesture at the time of the Passover, you know? So this one was a violent man, an insurrectionist. So he says, shall I release you Barabbas or Jesus? And the crowd, the mob shouted, release to us Barabbas. So the mob went for violence. They always do. They always do. They shout for blood, they want violence. But here's the sort of intriguing thing. What does Barabbas mean? We've talked about Abba, father, and Bar, Simon Bar Jonah, is the son. So Barabbas is the son of the father. And he's freed by Jesus. So in a sense, he's like all of us. We are sons of the Father, set free and given life by Jesus Christ. He's maybe another sort of model of the, some ways of the disciple. Okay. Pilate. So, Pilate is presented here as a sort of reluctant in this whole business. He preferred they just took care of it, but he's embarrassed him to take care of it, and he doesn't want to, and so he sort of vacillates between what his own instinct is, that there's really not much against this guy, and the clamour of the mob. And of course he ends up condemning him. sort of in stages. Let's go out scourging first and then see sort of what you think, you know. So he tries to walk a middle ground, but he doesn't. He cannot. There are times when you cannot vacillate. There are times when there's no middle ground. You're either on one side or the other. To be in the middle, to wash your hands, to be in the middle, is to be on the wrong side. I think history, and sometimes in our personal story, presents us sometimes with those moments. We value compromise, we value dialogue, but there are moments in which there's no dialogue. In Hitler's Germany, there was no vacillation. There was no middle road. You're either one side or the other. And most were on the wrong side. And so would Pilate. So Pilate is always represents in some way the self-justifiers, the vacillations, the sort of moderate ones, you know. Like Martin Luther King writing to the pastors in Montgomery, you know, they're saying, but it's not the time. It's not the right time. Let's take it gradually. He says, when is the time? How long? How long? Now is the time. So, that's Pilate's tragedy. He's kind of a weak man. He has power, but he's weak.
Complacent?
I don't know if he's complacent so much.
Doesn't want to risk what
Yeah, well, there's that, yeah. He's risk averse, that's for sure. He's risk averse, yes. He is, of course, yeah.
Really okay.
Yeah. And the last figure in it is when it was already evening, since it was the day of preparation, the day before the Sabbath. So Jesus died on Friday, the Sabbath, Saturday, right? So it all had to be cleaned up before the Sabbath. Joseph of Arimathea, a distinguished member of the council of the Sanhedrin, who was himself awaiting the kingdom of God, came and courageously went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Pilate was amazed that he was already dead, because sometimes the crucified ones, it took them 6 days to die. He summoned the centurion and asked him if Jesus already died. And when he learned of it from the centurion, he gave the body to Joseph. Having bought a linen cloth, he took him down, wrapped him in the linen cloth, and laid him in a tomb that had been hewn out of the rock. And he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Jesus, of Joseph, watched where he was laid. So he's a member of the council, the Sanhedrin. Now he does great kindness here after the death of Jesus. Gives him his own tomb, gives him a burial. But he was part of the council that condemned him. And there's no evidence that he said a word, that he spoke up. So he's all good to him after his death, just like we are with all the martyrs. Like we have a national day in support of Martin Luther King now. But take us back to 1963, where was the nation and where was the majority of people? Right? It's one of the tragedies of life that we save our eulogies for funerals. We save a lot of our kind words and our praise and our gratitude for after death, not beforehand. It's one of the poignant human tragedies. You know? I often meet people after death who are heartbroken because there were things they didn't do, there were things they didn't say, there was forgiveness they didn't grant or forgiveness they didn't seek. Joseph has come to me, kind of speaks of that. You know? Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. But his goodness is when it's all over. You Okay, so tonight we're going to take a break now, but after that, it's not going to be Sunday's Gospel, because in Sunday's Gospel we go to John. So we're going to take the Gethsemane passage for reflection, okay? Because we want to stay within Mark. All right, so 10 minutes, and we'll come back then for the... Alrighty, so Tessa, thank you.
Does everyone have one of the sheets with the scripture? Okay. So as Father mentioned, we are, as you would have noticed the last 2 Sundays, that what we've been doing is meditating, reading the scripture for the Sunday. This isn't that because we're going to John this Sunday, and then because we also have RCIA, we even go into different scriptures sometimes than when we don't have RCIA scrutinies happening. So a couple of things. One is just this is so beautiful what you're going to meditate on today, and we'll do the same process where we carefully read it, then you'll meditate on it. You will, as we read it or as you read it in your groups, you'll see one phrase or word calls to you. And in this, we have many paragraphs. So I'd say take the time to meditate even a little bit before you choose your phrase. So after you read it in a group, read it once more, either with the group or by yourself, and see what calls you. This is the beginning of Christ's battering and bruising. As you go through this, you can't help but feel that this is the beginning of his knowledge that he is to suffer and how he is to suffer and how badly he is to suffer. Even though we can say Jesus knew this all along, he came to suffer. Still, in the Garden of Gethsemane, you can see him grappling with that, and it becomes more real by the moment. One of the things I wanted to point out too is Bishop Fulton Sheen, a brilliant man, he had pointed out that one thing that Jesus asked is, could you not keep watch 1 hour? And this has stemmed for a lot of people to say you're having a holy hour once a day if you're a priesthood. But once a week or so for the rest of us. To what did Christ ask? 1 hour. Seriously, 1 hour. All right, let us turn to the back. We have the prayer for the Holy Spirit. We'll say together, breathe into me, Holy Spirit, that my thoughts may all be holy. Move in me, Holy Spirit, that my work too may be holy. Attract my heart, Holy Spirit, that I may defend all that is holy. Protect me, Holy Spirit, that I always be holy.
And then, I gotta leave. Okay, go ahead.
How was this for you guys?
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome. Excellent. This is one of the things that I wish there was more written about Gethsemane and Jesus in the garden. And there's a lot of opportunity to meditate on many things, but this is one that I find particularly compelling and thoughtful. So who would like to share some of what drew them or what resonated with them as they went through their prayer?
I'll share. Well, the one that jumped out at me was, my soul is sorrowful even to death. And that's just such a sorrowful line. And it just called to mind all the sorrow, that I experience, that anyone can experience, and how much sorrow there is in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's an amazing line.
Yeah.
Anyone else pick that kind of impression? That did?
What's that?
Oh, sorry. Did you have something to say about that?
About what?
Oh, being sorrowful.
No, that wasn't mine.
Oh, that wasn't yours. Okay. Okay. We'll come back. Yes.
I was looking at the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Kind of like on earth as it is in heaven. Kind of like taking that analogy, using that as a thought. I mean, that you could think other things with respect to that, but that's what I was. Where I was
Spoken to
thinking.
you.
Yeah.
And we had the spirit is, where's Dawn? We had the same, you had the same line with the flesh is willing.
Oh.
Sorry, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Right.
Yeah. Same. What's your name?
Mira.
Mira, same as Mira.
Oh.
Anyone else have anything to add there? So that's an expression that we hear a lot in our regular, everyday going around. Some people don't even know if it comes from the Bible, right? Yeah. It's one of those that you look at and you go, wow, I didn't realize it came from the Bible. But we give ourselves, I think part of what you're saying as well, I would tack on that we give ourselves maybe excuses, or we're sort of sometimes too easy on ourselves. We just go, oh yeah, I did want to do that, but I'm not feeling so today. So sometimes it's an action thing. It's just, it takes the human effort that it takes out of us. We aren't willing to give at that moment, even though we, in preparation, we say, oh, absolutely, for sure, we're going to do this, whatever that may be, right? So it's a call to all of us to, especially in a time of Lent, to resume, whether it be our charity or our prayer, whatever it is that lacks in our life, or we need to strengthen. Any other?
So we had that phrase, and in addition, it was almost like it sounded to me like a launching point, because the other one we had was withdrawing again, he prayed, saying the same thing, and the other phrase was the hour has come, and it made us kind of reflect on the fact that while we are human, we have a broken nature, but also it's the best approach is to continue to be steadfast and go back to pray to God. We know we get distracted, we know we deviate, but we can go back. He's always there waiting for us, and we have that wonderful opportunity, that access. The veil's torn, we have the access to Him, to His mercy, and the hour has come. Peter was saying how sometimes you don't know what that hour is and what it's for, but that goes back to at least trying to discern His will. We may not be 100% sure what His will is, but the desire to seek His will, as Merton said, was definitely make God happy.
Yeah. I was going to say, Thomas Merton said that, right? Just in seeking to know your will, I hope that pleases you, because none of us know if we're truly carrying out God's will. We pray and hope. I'm sure Jesus knew, right? but we're far from that. Anyone else want to add? Patrick?
That was mine too. So my prayer was, God help me want less. That's kind of it, So spirit is willing, flesh is weak. I know I have a good heart. My heart's in the right place, but I want what I want, and I want it now. And then when I get it, I want more. So I suffer from more. So God help me want less.
Powerful. How's Lent working out for you?
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
That's good though. That's a good test for Lent. Help me be more but want less.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Anyone else want to share something that they thought about or prayed about? No? All right. There's so much in this passage that I'm sure you'll come back to it again and again. And sometimes I know when we struggle and there's so much pain in the world, to take this cup away from me, I figure if Jesus asked that, then we can too. To always have faith, because God can do anything, and to not be shy of asking that, but to keep that dialogue open with Him. Just as Jesus gives us this model, Jesus gives us every chance in the Bible to see Him pray, and to keep that in our minds and to follow with that. And I know a lot of times it's God, I'm speaking, you listen, right? I have so many things that maybe I want, like Patrick, or whatever it is, it's I want it not necessarily for myself in a selfish way, but for someone else, or to see something good happen. And a lot of times our struggle truly is listening and listening to God. So. All right, you guys have been wonderful. So before we close with a prayer, I want to thank everybody who brought us great food today again. And next week, I heard when I was out of the room that we're going to have an additional week of meeting. So next week we have, I was going to say it's our last week, and we're going to have a party, but I guess it's not our last one. So the people who bring food again for next week, thank you in advance. All right, let's close out tonight. We're going to say the Our Father, and glory be to the Father, and the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
glory be to the
Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
name of the Father. Good night.